Hola, ¿qué tal? ¿Cómo están todos ustedes? Bienvenidos una vez más a una nueva exposición en este octavo congreso online de Reiki. En este momento me siento bien nervioso porque estamos delante de uno de los grandes maestros de Reiki reconocidos a nivel mundial. Su comprensión amplia de las prácticas de las influencias japonesas en el sistema ha permitido a estudiantes de todo el mundo a conectarse a profundidad con el Reiki. Frans Stiene es cofundador de la Casa Internacional de Reiki y de la Asociación Internacional de Reiki Shibumi. Él es autor de libros aclamados por la crítica internacional. Sus libros están en inglés, en holandés, en alemán, en francés y probablemente tú lo conoces aquí por este libro, ¿verdad? Que es la enciclopedia de Reiki, que la verdad yo siempre se lo recomiendo a todos mis estudiantes. Si realmente amas el Reiki, probablemente ya has leído este libro y estamos aquí con Frank Steen, uno de los autores de este maravilloso libro. Franz, thank you so much for staying here with us one more time in this online congress.
Thank you for inviting me. Really excited. Unfortunately, my Spanish is not so good. Hola, 12 besas. Te quiero.
Thank you. We really appreciate your time in all the contribution you are doing in the Reiki world. Thank you so much. So please hold the stage for you.
Thank you. Yeah, it's always interesting when being asked to talk about Reiki. There's so many different topics, there's so many different layers. So I just fire away a little bit and see where we go. So I was actually rereading an old manual of the Suireikere Gakkai the other day. And it's an organization started in Japan just around the time Mikasui passed away. And within it, there is a question and answer between someone and Mikasui. And one of the answers Mikasui gives is that when we do healing and when we want to live a healthy life, we do this from the mindset of Kami or Buddha nature. And I really like this because when we look at the Japanese tradition, then Kami, we could translate it as our own divine being, on our own inner uh, luminosity, or Buddha nature is the same, our own inner luminosity. And of course, sometimes when we hear these words, Kami or Buddha nature, then we think, oh, we have to be Japanese, we maybe have to be a Buddhist, but these are just labels. We put on something what ultimately we cannot put a label on. And this is just in the Japanese tradition, maybe we say Kami or Buddha nature. But the beautiful thing, I think, also about Mikasui, that he really tried to open it up already to people who were not really necessarily interested in some Zen or Tendai Buddhism, but just someone like me or like you who didn't want to become a monk or a nun. And so he also used the beautiful word of great bright light. And that word I really like. So because, for example, today it's here, I live in Haarlem, Holland, close to Amsterdam. It's a bit cloudy. And we could say when the clouds disappear or when the clouds depart, then it becomes sunnier. But that's not really the truth, because the sun is already shining, no matter if it's very cloudy or if it's nighttime. No one is not saying, let me switch off the sun. So um, this really points out for me to the essence of the system of Reiki, that we realize that beyond all the layers we put on ourselves, all the labels, actually the sun always shines. That inner luminosity is always there. And so when we look therefore at the system of Reiki, at maybe the symbols and the mantras, or even the precepts, we can see them in Japanese behind me. And when we look at the precepts, they actually describe this inner luminosity, or the mindset of Kami, of Buddha nature. Within that inner luminosity, there is no anger, there is no worry. In that inner luminosity, we are automatically being grateful. Automatically, we're being true to our way in our being. And automatically, there is a compassion for ourselves and for others. And this compassion from this state of mind of inner luminosity is ultimately a compassion what doesn't change according to circumstances. And most of the time, our compassion changes dramatically. So, for example, maybe Rishi says, "Oh, Frans, I really like your nice new vest." Like, "Oh, I'm going to be really kind. Thank you." And the next week he says, "I don't really like your new glasses." And then I'm going to be angry with him. So this compassion changes. But the compassion from this luminosity is actually compassion what doesn't change according to circumstances. And it's a little bit like this water. I can stick my finger in the water, but I cannot make it wetter or I cannot make it less wet. It's wet. So it's the same. Our inner luminosity, we cannot make it less compassionate or more compassionate. The quality of this inner luminosity, this great bright light, is compassion and kindness. So then when we look at healing within the system of Reiki, what Mikosui says, leading a happy, joyful life, that comes ultimately from the quality of this inner light, this inner openness, this inner spaciousness. Sometimes they're called in Japanese kami or Buddha nature. In reality, we also see this in the first mantra in Reiki 2. And if we translate it, it means also direct spirit, or it means divine spirit. And so this mantra points to our own divine spirit. This word or these mantras within the system of Reiki are signposts to pointing what has always been there, but we don't see because we focus on the clouds most of the time, right? I see it a lot in my local community where people say, "Oh, I've got a pain. I don't feel good. I'm unhappy." They're constantly focusing on these clouds. And as we all know, water give water grows. So the more I give this water, the more it becomes a habit. The more it becomes a habit, the more my daily life is like that. We feel constantly tired. We feel depleted. And the reason is, for example, very easy to see. For example, if we look again at the precept, if I'm worried the whole day or I'm angry the whole day, at the end of the day, I'm feeling super tired. But if I'm in this luminosity, what already shines beyond the clouds, then at the end of the day, I actually feel really open. I feel very energized. I don't feel depleted. I feel more happy. I feel more joyful. So here comes something therefore very interesting, because when we look at the system of Reiki, often we think about healing. And then most of the time in many of these traditions, we talk about healing maybe a physical issue or an emotional issue, say the pain in my knee or the pain in my head, or maybe other illnesses, or my attachment to drinking or smoking or feeling unhappy. But we can ask ourselves this question: would there become a time in my life that I would have no more physical problems, or if I have no more mental problems? So we all know that we grow old. We cannot heal ourselves from that. That's impossible. And when we grow old, we also know that we highly likely we're going to suffer, right? Because there is some pain. Our body is not as fit anymore. I see that at my mum. She's almost 88 now. And, even at her mind is super healthy. Her body is falling apart. It's part of life. So we can ultimately say we cannot heal ourselves from dying. We cannot heal ourselves from illnesses. maybe tonight I go and have a little cerveza and I maybe have a headache tomorrow morning, for example, right? I cannot say, oh, now for the rest of my life, I heal myself of every headache I will in the future. So this is also impossible. However, we could heal and in a different way. And this is, I think, what really Mikasui pointed out, particularly when we look at the precepts, because within the precepts, we don't actually see a mention of a physical healing. We really see the healing of a state of mind. So when we tap into this inner luminosity, then the quality of this inner luminosity is no anger and no worry. So for example, say that tomorrow I wake up with a cold, or I will grow old, hopefully, and then my body will grow old. I will grow older. I also will die one day. We cannot escape this, so we cannot heal ourselves from this. But I can heal myself in a way on how I perceive this. So the more I tap into my wholeness, so healing, the word traditionally comes from the word whole, remembering our wholeness, our purity, this inner light, that when I grow old and I do get pains and discomfort, or maybe I'm dying, then I can do this maybe through my practice from a space of no anger, from a space of no worry, that I'm grateful for what I have in my life, that I'm being true to my way in my being, and that I can still be compassionate no matter if I'm suffering from old age or pain, or maybe that I cannot hear that well anymore, or maybe not see that well anymore, or maybe not walk that well anymore because of my old age. Or maybe then I can die from a space of no anger, no worry, being grateful, being true to my way of being, and being compassionate. And this test we all get. We cannot escape it. So, of course, it's great if we can heal ourselves from a headache or a discomfort or an illness or an emotional issue. But these will come back over time because we grow old, because we all will die. We all have this test when we cannot escape it. So when we look at Mikasui's teachings, therefore, we can see that he's pointing to this purity, this wholeness, this inner luminosity. So, for example, there is a meditation practice taught in a lot of these Japanese teachings, and it's called Joshin Kokyoho. And when we look at the word Joshin Kokyoho, it's translated Joshin, pure mind, and Kokyo means breathing in and out. So that through the practice of this Joshin Kokyoho, we realize our purity. So normally we don't focus on this purity again, like we focus a lot on our suffering. We want to peel away our suffering. We're going to get rid of the suffering. We fight with our suffering. I'm unhappy. I've got a pain. We're kind of fighting with it. But Mikasui actually says, let's be grateful for it instead of fighting with it. Let's accept it. So gratefulness, ultimately accepting it from this space of purity. So the wonderful examples in a lot of these traditions is the sky or the sun. So the sky is wide open. It's beautiful light blue. This is sometimes why we see maybe in certain traditions, when we look at the medicine Buddha, we see the color blue. It's this beautiful wide openness. And in the sky, different clouds come. Dark clouds, fluffy clouds, a rainbow, a plane. But the sky itself is not bothered by it, right? But therefore, if we focus on these clouds, on our suffering, on our pain, then we also water it all the time. And the more we water it, the more it grows. But at the same time, underneath the suffering, underneath our pain, underneath all the emotional issues we carry with us, there's also this inner luminosity. Just like the sky, just like the sun always shines no matter what happens. but the sun is not bothered by it. But most of the time, we find it very difficult. So due to the practices within the system of Reiki, the meditation practices, hands-on healing, working with the symbols and mantras, the precepts, Reiju or attunement, when we practice those together, slowly, slowly, we start to realize, oh, actually, beyond these layers, beyond these clouds, there's also something what has always been there since I was being conceived, what was always been pure, but I just don't see it.
Hmm.
And in a way, I like going to the movies. So it's a little bit like this. Sometimes I go to the movies and I got caught up in the movie and I cry or I get very excited or scared, depending on what kind of movie I am. But so that is always changing. But there is one thing in the cinema what doesn't change, and that is the wide screen behind the movie, what is wide and open, spacious, what actually anything can happen on this wide screen. But if I get caught up in my movie, what I think, the movie of my life, the story of my life, oh, poor me, I have this, I have that, and particularly therefore the story or I, me, mine, right? Then I don't see the screen. I don't see that openness. But in my time, I'm not sure if this can happen now these days, when you still had these old reels for a movie, then if something happened and the movie stopped, then the the movie film itself melted away and you could see the widescreen. So the movie itself, it goes so fast that we think it's actually one thing. But it's not true. These are like little imageries going so fast. So our mind normally goes so fast, right? We're constantly busy thinking about the past, about the future, about the present moment, that it goes so fast that we cannot see what is beyond it. So therefore, these meditation practices, when we focus on the breath, like Joshin Kokyu-ho, or when we focus on the hands-on healing, or when we focus on a symbol and mantra, then suddenly we slow down. And when we slow down, this story we are telling ourselves can actually melt away, so that suddenly, what do we see when we slow down? Oh, we see that beyond the story of what I'm telling myself, I'm making it up, is actually something else. Is this beautiful, wide open spaciousness, what I normally don't connect to. And this traditionally is called Reiki. So the Reiki is this inner luminosity, what is always there beyond the stories, beyond particularly I, me, mine. And again, we can clearly see this within the Reiki precepts, because if we have let go of I, me, mine, then who is there to get angry? Who is there to get worried? No one. Because normally I am angry, I am worried, I am fearful. But when we let go of this I, me, mine, that softening of this tightness of this is Frans or this is Risi or this is my story, then slowly, slowly we can see actually what is beyond that. And actually, there's a moment in time where we all kind of see this. And this is when we die. It's a bit of a strange metaphor, but for example, say if I'm dying here right now, then there comes a moment where you would say, France is gone. However, my body is still there. So at that moment, you see something what is different than the body, what we say is France, right? Or maybe you have a dog and the dog dies and you say, oh, Bobby is gone, but the dog is still there. So again, there is something what we normally don't recognize, what is suddenly has disappeared. What is this? And this is what Mikasui tried to point out. So for example, in the Reiki 2, we have the second symbol and mantra. And if you translate this mantra, it can also be translated as my natural disposition. And in Japanese, this means, who were you naturally before you put all these layers over yourself, before you told yourself this story, before society told you a specific story? In Zen, this is called, what were you before your mom and dad? Or sometimes it's, what is your original face? And like, for example, I didn't come out of my mom with my glasses and my little jacket and say, hey, I'm Frans. So the first label my mom and dad gave me was Frans, right? And then they looked at me and they said, Frans is a boy. And then boys have to behave in a certain way and more labels come. But that is not really the truth, because my essence is not really Frans. My essence also ultimately is neither male nor female. So this is where, when we tap into this purity beyond labels, then we can really see what Reiki is. And this is what Mikasui tried to point out. Not always easy, because when we grow up, we get so identified with these labels, right? And then, for example, I used to live in India for 2 years, and this happened a lot when I lived in India. Which they said, or they said, "Excuse me, what is your name?" I said, "Frans." No, 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 no. What is your name? Frans. No, 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 no. Your name. My name is Frans. No, no, not your country. What is your name? I said, my name is Frans. I'm from Holland. And they got completely confused. So I just called myself Frank, right? But some people, they get quite upset if you change one letter in their name, right? But it's just a label. And then if you really look at it, we get actually upset with one letter. It's actually quite ridiculous if you really think about it, right? And this is, then we get angry, then we get worried that people don't really like us because they misspell or they missay our name, and we get confused. I think, Risi, you also have that, because you have different name, and then you Spanish or English, people will pronounce it differently. And we have to be open for that, willing to be open and not so tight. So when we look at these symbols and mantras within the system of Reiki from uh, a more traditional approach, then we can clearly see what Mikasui actually was talking about. And here comes, I find something very wonderful. And for me, this is, I think, a very important element within the system of Reiki, because Mikasui in the precepts, he says today. And he doesn't say next year or in 10 years' time or through a lot of practice or on the massage table or on your meditation pillow. He says today your essence is already bright. Today your essence is already no anger, no worry, being grateful, right? It's not that through practice, finally, we become more bright, right? So I like for myself to really look at a lot of these old teachings. And when we look at Taoism or Buddhism or Shintoism or Hinduism, we see a lot of these elements where they say, oh, your essence is already pure, right? It's not that by the practice that we make it pure. No, by the practice, we realize that it's already pure. And that actually, it was already pure from when we were conceived. We just have never really focused on this because of society, because of our parents. And in a way, we can ask ourselves, this is, I like, sometimes I do this in a class and I say, okay, everybody, I'd like you to touch the universe. Show me how you do it. And some people go like this, some people go like this, some people go like this. And some people sit there and they go, actually, Franz, I don't have to do anything to touch the universe. I said, why not? I said, well, because I'm touching it already. And ultimately, we're touching it already 100%, right? It's not that we can say through more practice, now I'm touching it 50%, and then I practice some more, I'm touching it 70%, and then I forget to practice, or even when we get angry, we're still touching it 100%. So, but these are the stories we tell ourselves, right? This is our own stories and society stories, and sometimes spiritual stories where we tell these things. And for example, in some of these traditions, they say it's so easy we don't believe it. It's so close we don't see it. It's so simple we don't accept it because it's right here. But because we tell those stories to ourselves. And so um, I tried to do this all in a bit of a 40 minutes time. So in Reiki 2, we have the third symbol and mantra. And if you translate that, that means actually my original nature is right thought. And right thought in Japanese is quite an interesting one, sometimes also called right mind. And it's the word nen, mind, thought. And in Zen, the word nen is quite interesting because they say we actually have to stay with the first nen or the first thought and not add more thoughts to the first thought, create a second thought, a third thought, a fourth thought, or a fifth thought. I'll give you an example. So for example, it's raining and I walk into my living room, I look through the window and I see rain. That's the first thought. But now most of the time, then I start to create a story about the rain. So the first thought is rain. Then the second thought, I don't like it. I'm going to get wet. Now I have to go on the bike. It's going to be, bleh. Now my day is not going to be happy because it's raining, right? So, but the rain itself is neither good nor bad. It's just rain. And this is the same thing we add to lots of different things in our life. Rishi says something to me, and then I go like, or I see Rishi and I go like, first thought, Rishi. And then suddenly I go like, oh, this, that, this, whatever. I create a whole story around you, but actually then I don't really see you anymore because I created a story, my story around you, and I don't see your being anymore.
Mm.
I'll give you one more example. When I used to live in Australia, I lived there for a long time. We in the winter we used to have fireplaces, so I would to chop wood. I was busy chopping wood, and so when I started to live here in Holland, just in front of my apartment there is a park. So the first day I walk into the park, I didn't really see the trees. The first thought was trees, but then the second thought was, I wonder what kind of fire would this make? I wonder if it's difficult or hard to chop. I wonder how long it burns. Does it burn up really quickly? So I didn't really see the tree. That makes sense? So the word nen actually, or the particular mantra in Reiki 2 say, try as much as possible to stay with the first nen and don't create a whole story around it, because then we can be free. Then we can see what it really is. It's not that we have to stop thoughts, but we don't cling to the thoughts, or we don't add more thoughts to the first thought. Because the more I add thoughts to the first thought, then I get angry that it rains. I get worried that it's raining because I might get wet. And then I'm not grateful for the rain anymore. But this we can also see in people, also see how we do hands-on healing on ourselves, because the more I add these labels on it, then becomes very difficult, right? For example, I have here a little thing. It's a beautiful crystal ball. And my teacher in Japan, or a lot of teachers in Japan, they have these. And they show it to actually show the purity of that this is you being Reiki. And then we put labels on it. So I put a label, Frans, man, this, that, whatever kind of labels I put on it. And then I don't see this anymore, right? I don't see this beautiful brightness anymore. However, no matter how many sticky labels I put on this still stays exactly the same, right? This never changed. It's except that I constantly focus on the labels. But beneath the labels is still this pure inner luminosity. Also, when I have lots of labels on this, then, for example, we have the word kokoro in Japanese, love, kindness, compassion, etc. And if I would roll this on the floor here, you hear ro 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 ro, like kokoro ro ro, because it keeps rolling, right? I can go with the flow. But as soon as I put lots of labels on this, it doesn't roll anymore. It gets stuck. And we know this, we see this for ourselves. Often we say, oh, I'm stuck. I feel depressed. I feel sad. I feel tired. And we become stuck. Our mind is stuck. Therefore, our energy is stuck. Our body becomes stuck. So therefore, the more we tap into this inner luminosity, or Mikusui called Reiki, or traditionally the word Reiki in Japanese, Kami, Buddha nature, inner bright light, ultimately, we cannot stick a label on it, right? Ultimately, I think it needs to be label free. But for convenience sake, we have to say something. We have to talk about something, right? We cannot just say and say nothing. But the more we therefore look beyond the labels, and of course, we can try to peel these labels away. What is great, don't get me wrong, it's perfectly fine, perfectly valid. But at the same time, this is also already here. So we have, in the system of Reiki, I always say, in a way, we have two options. Through hands-on healing, through the meditation practices, we peel these labels away. However, if I can peel a label away, I can also stick it back, right? Because this is our habitual pattern. Or I can say, today I'm also already bright. I'm also already luminous. I do have issues. I do have a pain. I do have a discomfort. But at the same time, I also have this luminosity. And so the more we therefore then focus on this luminosity, what grows? Luminosity, because what I give water grows, right? Actually, it's very simple. If I plant an apple seed, I get apples. I don't get bananas. If I plant bananas, I get bananas. I don't get pineapples. So Mikasui, within the precepts, he actually says, what are we planting today? Right? Do I plant anger? Do I plant worry? Then automatically next week or in a year's time, I feel more worried and angry. Right? If I plant being gratefulness or kindness and compassion, being true to my way of being, then that is what I get. So this is sometimes what we can call karma, right? What we planting, that's what we getting. So the more we plant kindness, compassionate, being open, being grateful, being this luminosity, then automatically our anger and our worry will soften because we don't give it water. So therefore, the system of Reiki is ultimately about realizing that we are Reiki, that we've always been Reiki. Today, right? That today our luminosity is already pure, is already whole. And that if we tap into this and remember this again and again and again and again, then we soften that other habit, the habit of constantly saying, I'm tired, I can't do it, I'm unhappy, etc. Yesterday, I did a treatment, hands-on healing on a client. Afterwards, she said, Frans, I feel so light. I feel so an inner happiness and an inner joy. I haven't felt that for a while. I said, yeah, but now after the treatment, when you go home, keep remembering this. Don't go home and keep saying, oh, I'm tired. I feel sad. I'm lonely.
Mm.
I've got a pain, because now we're watering this. But keep watering what you have felt. Why can you water that? Because it's already what you have. We just don't see it. Because normally we think only through strict lots of practice, we maybe can finally achieve healing, or finally we have practiced so much that now finally we have this inner luminosity, we have enough energy, but we are already 100% the universe. So this is how I think Mikasui really put the whole system of Reiki together. If we look at these symbols and mantras, we look at the precepts, we look even at the word hands-on healing, or the concept of Reiju or attunement initiation, or we look at these meditation practices like Joshin Kokyoho, or even Hatsureiho, other meditation practice. Hatsureiho, emanating this light, emanating ray. It's just like to being the sun. It's not that true to practice. We emanate more. It feels like this because when the clouds depart, it feels like it becomes sunnier. But if we look at the sun, nothing has changed to the sun, no matter how many clouds there are, no matter if it's nighttime, no one has switched off the sun or the sun is diminished. The sun is still exactly the same. So we can therefore also in the Reiki, three symbol and mantra, we see the kanji of the sun and the moon, right? So again, this portrays this thing what actually never changes, right? The clouds changes, but the sky itself never changes. The sun never changes. Your essence never changes. And that essence in Japan is called Kami, Reiki, Buddha nature, great bright light. We could call it God essence, or maybe in Spanish you have a different name for it, or who knows what we can call it. Ultimately, we cannot stick a label on it, because if we look at light, here we see light. No matter what label I try to stick on it, nothing sticks to light. So the more we tap into our light, the less of these labels will stick to us. Automatically, these labels fall away. So this is a little bit for me, in a nutshell, in about 40 minutes time to explain what the system of Reiki is.
Wow, wow. Franz, thank you. Thank you so much for, again, for your time, for your inspiration. And in this exposition, thank you for point us to what really matter in Reiki practice, you know? Um, you have a little more time in
Yeah,
this
of
moment?
course.
Because some word start to pop anytime when I was listening your exposition about the attachment, you know,
Yeah.
because we had many attachment about those story, about those layers. So can you
Yeah.
tell us something about that?
Yeah, I think this is, again, all these old teachers, they say, if we could let go of all the attachments, no problem in the world, right? But this is it. We get attached to, this is my glass. Well, this is not really my glass, right? So for example, say I'm sitting in your office and then we have a glass of water and you say, this is my glass. And I said, this is my glass. And then 2 minutes later, we swap glasses, and now my glass becomes your glass. And so this is such an illusion, right? So these attachment we have, also the attachment, of course, ultimately to I, me, mine, right? Then we have to investigate, where is this I, me, mine? Can I find it? And if we go within, maybe actually we cannot find it at all. Maybe we realize there is, in fact, nothing called I, me, mine. It's not. I have a friend who's a heart surgeon. I just was teaching in Italy. He lives there. And he says, I cut open lots of people, never found an I, me, mine in there. So the attachment to a life, right? I think this is also a very big issue in our modern world, that we think we live forever. But this is, as soon as I was born, we know Frans is going to die. As soon as this glass was born, we know it's going to die one day. So the attachment to a physical object, or even Frans as living till a ripe old age, is an illusion, because we don't know. I might walk away and suddenly pass away. Yeah? Like, it's super fragile. So even that attachment to my physicality, in Zen, hey, you have to drop your mind and body. And it doesn't mean we have to drop that, but no attachment to it. And so therefore these attachments are super strong, because we've been taught that by society. We have to have a house, we have to have a car, we have to have these, maybe have to have more cars, we have to have more stuff. Like, I've got people, I've got some people who come into my place. I teach sometimes from home, and they say, Frans, can we ask you something? And this happened quite a few times. They said, where's all your stuff? I said, what do you mean? This is it. Yeah, but your things. I said, well, this is it. And then I think this is also why in a lot of these old traditions, Risi, they say maybe do a visualization of giving everything away. Give your books away, give your table away, give your car away, as a visualization to help you to loosen this attachment. And then in some of these old traditions, they actually do visualizations where you give your body away, right? And then maybe when we do this more, automatically we can give more love. Yeah, because normally we also say, due to attachment, well, I can give you love, but not you, right? Because you belong to this group, or you look like this, or and then this love becomes very limited. So I think attachment is one of the hardest things we have in our life. And of course, if I attach myself to this, I cannot receive anything either. Because to receive, I have to open my hand. To give, I have to open my hand. So this is, again, in a lot of these traditions, they say, this is why traditionally monks and nuns were told to give all their possessions away. Why? Because then they were open to receive the teachings. But we find it very difficult. We hold on to so many things, right? This is my partner. No, it's not really your partner, right? This is my city. This is my town. This is my country. These are just words, labels, illusions we stick on things, but it's not really valid. And it can change super rapidly. Yeah? Like, for example, it's the same thing. I might say, oh, Risi is there and I'm here. So now there is a there and a here. But you say, no, that's not true. I am here and Frans is there. So here and there is also an illusion. It doesn't exist. Mm-hmm. One moment I'm here and the next moment I'm there. Or we have the same with tall and small. I live on the 11th floor. When I look at the park here, the trees look very small. But when I quickly go down and I walk into the park, then I go, wow, the trees look very tall. But in the meantime, the trees never changed. This is just my perception. And so this is also with all of these attachments we have, is just a perception. So due to the practice, when we tap into this spaciousness, this openness, and I think this is, again, I know you know that too, Rishi, and all these traditions that talk about this open spaciousness or this luminosity, what has no beginning and end, then we feel more free because we're not clinging to all of these thoughts or clinging to this is my thing, this is my object, this is my partner, this is my fest or whatever. But this is not really my fest, because to me, able to have this vest, someone had to grow cotton, right? Someone had to make a vest out of it, then someone had to have a shop. So ultimately, I cannot say this is solely mine. This is actually all these people and the plants and the trees, even the earth was responsible. No earth, no vest. So if we really look at this picture, then the whole universe is in this vest. So I cannot say it's mine. Take one element away and this vest disappears. And so when we really contemplate that, then we can loosen up a little bit. And then, of course, if I have less attachments, what happens to my energy? I can flow like crazy, right? Because when I'm like this, my energy is caught up, it becomes stuck. And we know this, the more we have these attachments, the more we suffer, right? Oh, there is a little dent in my car. Oh, like, so sorry. I don't try to offend anybody, but I, it's so funny. Like when we really think about it, it's the same if I buy white shoes, then of course I know they're going to get dirty, right? And then people go, oh, but I suddenly have a dent in my car, and they freak out. They get angry, they get worried. Then there is stress, then they get even more angry. But we know as soon as we buy a car, there will come a dent in your car. We cannot stop it. And so when we think about these things, then we can actually loosen up a little bit. We feel a little bit, finally, we can relax. No tension, no stress.
Wow, totally. Thank you. Thank you so much, Franz. Thank you again for your valued time, for your inspiration, and all your contribution to the Reiki world. Thank you. Thank you so much, Franz.
Well, always nice to talk to you. And I hope one day we get to meet in person. So it would be great.
Ya, ya, I hope that too. Bueno, muchísimas gracias a todos por estar aquí con nosotros, haber llegado hasta el final de esta exposición. Estoy seguro que te ha fascinado y te llevas, pero muchísima inspiración recordando lo que realmente importa en este mundo de Reiki. Franz, thank you so much for stay one more time in this eighth online congress.
Muchas gracias. Adiós.